Very good evening, dignitaries on the dais, members of the diplomatic corps, fellow members, ladies and gentlemen. We present you the much-awaited Calcutta Club and the Telegraph national debate. I would request the president of our club, Dr. Dilip Kumar Saha, to please deliver his welcome speech. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure, as the president of the Calcutta Club, welcome to you all to the Calcutta Club national debate presented by the Telegraph. We are the most grateful to the speaker for having found the time for their busy schedule to be here with us evening. A very special thank to the moderator for this evening, Professor Rudrangshu Mukherjee. I also thank all those who work hard to make this debate possible.
Good evening and welcome to the national debate organized by the Calcutta Club and the Telegraph. Before I call the House to order, some basic ground rules. As you can see, there are 8 speakers, 4 against and 4 for. And the speakers will speak in the order that they are sitting, beginning with Kunal Basu on this side and Muhammad Salim on my left. Each speaker has 8 to 10 minutes. At 8 minutes, there will be a warning bell, and at 10 minutes, a longer bell to say that time is over. There will be a vote at the end to see if the motion has been carried or the motion has been defeated. I will introduce the speakers as they go up to speak and not all in one go. The subject is a challenging one, even though it has been debated and written about ever since the idea of democracy and welfare were first thought of. I would say from the time of John Stuart Mill. Is there a trade-off between liberty and welfare or equality? I'm sure we will hear very strong arguments from either side. I will now ask Kunal Basu to propose the motion. The motion reads, "This House believes in Indian democracy. Freedom is more important than equality." Kunal Basu, distinguished novelist, known in our city and across India as the author of The Japanese Wife. He's also a professor at the Syed School of Business in the University of Oxford. Kunal Basu, I recognize you to propose the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening. The key advantage of appearing in the company of politicians, some would say the only advantage of appearing in the company of politicians, is that one can make up meanings of words and go along merrily. And with 3 Aristotelian abstractions staring us in the face, freedom, democracy, and equality, to say nothing of the mother of all abstractions, Indian, there is some merit in being the first speaker in the line of speakers. Let us be clear, ladies and gentlemen, what we have before us today, this evening, is not a Big Bang motion. It's not a Big Bang motion, such as this House believes that Salman Rushdie must be awarded the Bharat Ratna. Or this House believes that West Bengal deserves 2 chief ministers, one cartoonable, the other not. What we have before us today is a debate of nuances. A debate of nuances, and therefore it's important that as we get started into this debate, that we put some flesh and blood around our Aristotelian abstractions. Let's start with equality. From Karl Marx to Teddy Roosevelt, social thinkers over the years have agreed that equality really means equality of opportunity. Not equality of result, not equality of outcome, not equality of conditions, but equality of opportunities. It means doing away with the privileges that one may be born with. It means deleting all that comes from being born with a golden birth certificate. That's equality, equality of opportunity. Freedom, ladies and gentlemen, is about freedom of expression. It's about freedom of choice, freedom of creativity, freedom to engage, that all of us individuals aspire to have in any society. The freedom to engage with other individuals, with institutions, with society on our own terms, however ludicrous those terms might have come across in the views of others. Finally, democracy. Democracy in every time and age, ladies and gentlemen, is an unfinished project. Democracy is the ultimate utopia. It's the only worthwhile utopia. Okay. And therefore, let us set in place what this debate is not about. This debate is not about pitting equality against freedom. Even though a ham-handed interpretation of the words more important may actually imply that. It's not about pitting freedom against equality. It would be laughable. Both are non-negotiable in any healthy society. Pitting freedom against equality is like pitting Dhoni against Tendulkar when we want both of them to fire for India. Okay. Here is the nuance, ladies and gentlemen. While both freedom and equality are desirable, incredibly desirable, they appear in different points of the trajectory in the history of a society. They appear at different points. Equality is the destination. It is the end game of democracy. Whereas freedom is its enabling condition. Is what makes democracy, the dream of democracy, even possible. While both are desirable, equality sits as the ultimate utopia, as the ultimate touchstone that we all aspire to. Whereas freedom ensures that we have an opportunity to get there. Use whatever metaphor you want to use. Freedom is the midwife, democracy is the healthy offspring. Freedom is armed revolution, equality is dictatorship of the proletariat. I say this for the benefit of Muhammad Salim. Freedom is Dharma Yudh. Equality is Dharma Rashtra. I say this for the benefit of Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad. Freedom is investment. Equality is return on investment. I say this for those that are somewhat prosaic in the audience. Choose your own metaphor. Now let's indigenize, let's Indianize our debate between the trajectory where one sits as the destination and the other is the enabling condition. Let's Indianize our debate. One does not need to be nominated for the Nobel Prize to postulate that the key challenge faced by Indian democracy today is to balance economic growth with distributive justice. Not balance as in creating an inertia, not balance as in creating a stalled parliament, but in terms of creating powerful momentum with respect to both of these. Economic growth as a powerful engine, distributive justice as a powerful engine. How do we balance this is the challenge. And within these two lie a whole myriad of exciting, challenging, and complex issues, each worthy of a Calcutta Club Telegraph debate. Topics such as land for industry, a topic which is very close to the heart of people of Bengal at this point in time. To FDI or not to FDI. mining rights versus environmental protection, governance and the C word. How do we create conditions for entrepreneurial activity in our society? How do we unfetter entrepreneurial activity in our society, unleash creativity in our society by reining in, by creating legal reforms, and by reining in crony capitalism? What about reservation and social inclusion, a topic which Rajdeep Sardesai is going to speak at length. I overheard him talking before the debate. So here's the sneak preview. And on and on and on. These are the topics, these are the debates, these are the issues that will get us, the resolution of which will get us closer to that goal called equality. Now here's the question. Who has the answers to these questions? Well, politicians would have us believe that they have all the answers. And the media is hell-bent on parading them incessantly before us. The notion is that actually the answer may lie outside the television sets. Perhaps the 1.2 billion Indians have ideas. Ideas that will get us closer to building a bridge between economic growth that we cannot do without in this world of ours, as well as distributive justice that we cannot do without in this diverse society of ours, and get us close to the objective of equality. Now that's possible. It's possible to unleash those ideas of 1.2 billion Indians if they had freedom. Freedom from censorship, freedom from intimidation, freedom from the bounds, the stonewalling of legal systems and bureaucratic procedures. If they had freedom from the blackout imposed by media, then it might be possible that we may be able to create the republic of ideas which will address the challenges of Indian democracy and get us closer to that goal of equality. Freedom could act as the enabling condition, unleashing the potential of real India. Okay. Now, it's important at this point to remember that when we talk about freedom, we are not necessarily talking about the chattering classes, the freedom of the chattering classes, the freedom of the intellectuals, the freedom of the fashionable people who will drop a few verbal calories in cocktail party conversations. We are not simply talking about their freedom. We are largely talking about the freedom of the dispossessed. Okay. The freedom of the dispossessed will ensure that the goal of equality is within reach. What happens when this freedom is denied? What happens? The Red Corridor. What the Prime Minister of India calls the biggest threat in internal security terms to our country. That's what happens when freedom is denied. The goal of equality moves further and further away. Now, from a land of a million ideas, it takes just a few steps to move to a land of million mutinies if freedom is denied. Now, the question may be asked, why waste our time in this intermediate step of freedom when we could fast forward towards equality? Okay? Why don't we try to legislate equality and not worry about freedom of expression, freedom of engagement, freedom of creativity? Let me tell you a story. In 1989, I was a visiting professor at the People's University of China in Beijing. We arrived the day Hu Yaobang, a member of the Politburo, died, and a wreath was laid in Tiananmen Square in his honor. And throughout this month of our stay in China, I marveled at the equality of China. Universal health care, universal education, food and shelter that we have failed to provide to our own citizens over the decades. Now, this equality was sanctioned by an all-pervasive ideology that took no prisoners, by a one-party state that had serious penalties in place for freedom. And the result? Well, you know what the result was on the 9th or 3rd of June. I could give you many more examples, Mr. Moderator. I could give you examples of the Soviet Union, of North Korea. I could give you examples of societies that have believed that it's possible to achieve equality by denying rights to a few people here and there, mostly intellectuals, social critics, or artists. And the failure of these societies had made us hear the words of Abraham Lincoln in our ears once again. It is important, he said, to free the slave, to free the free. Freedom, societies that value freedom create basis for sustainable and mature equality. That's what we want in Indian democracy. Societies that do not value freedom create conditions for a patriarchy, can create conditions for a kind of dictatorship that guides equality by denying the rights to its own population. I urge you, ladies and gentlemen, to support the motion, even if it reads a bit quixotic when you take a first glance. Okay? Freedom is more important than equality is just our very own Indian way of saying, think about what you want to do first before you want to think about what you will achieve later. It's our own Indian way of saying, love is more important than marriage. Thank you.
Freedom is the enabling condition. Equality is the utopia. Nicely put that. Muhammad Salim, there might have been bits of that speech what was music to your ears, freedom for the dispossessed. Examples from China and the Soviet Union may not have been, because you have been practically, for the entire adult part of your life, a member of the Communist Party, Marxist, member of its Central Committee now, MP elected from Calcutta. You've been a deputy leader of the House for your party. I now ask you to speak against the motion. Muhammad Salim.
You have given me the opportunity to bring the debate to the concrete situation, because my learned opponent, Mr. Kunal Bose, are a good old friend. I remember the old days of college days debate, and we engaged each other, of course, on the both sides, not on the other side, the same side. And still I think it's very not clear whether he's opposing or proposing. But the abstraction I like. Now, the topic of the motion is, in Indian democracy, freedom is more important than equality. Basically, two parts. One is Indian democracy, and the other part is freedom is more important than equality. Now, it's again Indian tendency to counterpose each other. Who is more important than whom? Hum kisi se kam nahi. And that continues. That's where we find the three important ingredients of democracy, parliamentary democracy. The legislature, executive, and judiciary, most of the time are at loggerheads about their own jurisdiction. I don't find that one should put like freedom is more important than equality. And when particularly Kunal Bose says that equality is the end, I request him to go back to the college days and university days, to start with the basics. The equality is the basics of the human society, history of mankind. And when we see the inequality, that's a distortion, aberrations, deliberately done. Primitively, the equality prevailed. And now, after possessing so many things, in the name of freedom for few, the others were subjugated. And that's how there is inequalities. And if there is inequalities of opportunities, hardly one can realize the rights enshrined in the Constitution. As far as, if we come back to Indian context, because after all, democracy is a universal concept. And we know from the days of French Revolution, equality, liberty, fraternity, three foundation stones of democracy. So you cannot take away one and cannot separate one from other when you talk about democracy. And when you talk about democracy in Indian context is not borrowed from Western world. From the days before the Western civilization came in, we're talking about this participation, maybe in very raw and crude and primitive form, but the community participation and Panch and Panchayat. If we go to the Kautilya's Arthashastra, we will find the interpretation of democracy may not be that reformed, which will impress my opponents. Remember, when war, weaponry, murder, torture were used to extend the influence of one's territory, at that point of time, we, the Indians, tried to influence the whole world, not through war, not through weapons, but through the human values, peace, progress. And even now, there are countries in the Far East which is using those values as their foundation to build upon the modern development. It's another matter that we have sent them off from the Indian territory just for the sake of freedom of few to rule the dispossessed, the rulers, the powerful elites, you may name it in any form. They enjoyed freedom all along, and even now. But when we talk about equality, it's a question of equal opportunity for all. In our own Indian constitution, we have found how we committed to our people equality of opportunity. When on the eve of the Indian independence, Jawaharlal Nehru's famous speech on the tryst with destiny, he promised that. He promised that it will open the new openings of opportunities. But now, after so many years, what do we find? Still this poverty is there, prevailing. What you're talking about, not only in the so-called red corridors, but in the vast, even including in the cities and the entire country. And this disparity is growing. Now it's not a question of haves and have-nots. It's a question of have-lots and have-nots. And how do you expect these people to enjoy the rights given to them in the name of democracy, the freedom ensured by the Constitution, if they don't have the opportunity, the equality of opportunity, rather than if we talk about inequality of opportunity. As in the case of economy, we judge on the basis of income distribution. Similarly, we can apply the same method in the case of inequality of opportunities. And Mr. Kunal was conceded that there are so many freedoms. Freedoms are different, and distinct freedom influence each other. It's a coherent and integrated. If I don't have the opportunity of education, I cannot convert it into an opportunity for earning. So one kind of freedom helps to another kinds of freedom. Similarly, in every field, we have to ensure the equality to guarantee that the citizens enjoy freedom. Without that equality, of course, people can go and may vote. That's one point. But just taking part in the election is not democracy. Democracy is not all about just vote. It's a question of participation. Participation in decision making. And in participation, decision making means debate, discuss, and criticize. Now, even though we have parliamentary democracy and electoral process is there, and we have over the years survived, we complain that nothing works, but still in India everything is workable. Chalta rehta hai. We have Jugaad technology. The parliament does not function, but parliamentary democracy is functioning. The parliamentarians do not deliver, but the democracy is delivering to some extent. So that's inherent contradiction. But had there been equality of opportunity to every section, 1.2 billion of Indians, the things would have been different. The opportunities, whatever kind of assets we have created, whatever kind of big name we have created, our own people, when they are doing big in Silicon Valley, higher education has reached only less than 10% of Indian population. So the equality of opportunity is not given, at least opportunity of education, to the 90%. If the 10% who have received this opportunity and could excel and can rule, be it in Cambridge or in Silicon Valley, if we could take it to the 100% of Indian, so for Mera Desh Mahan should not have been written only in the back of the trucks. To come to one couplet by Ananda Mullah, निज़ाम मैं कदा साकी बदलने की ज़रूरत है, निज़ाम मैं कदा साकी बदलने की ज़रूरत है, कई सफ़े हैं ऐसी जिन्हें अब तक ना मैं आई ना जाम आया. They are waiting. Our section has reached, prevailed. Our section has availed of the opportunities, but a vast section is still there. That's why talking about inclusive growth. That is all about. We have to include them. Now, if we go by the argument put forward by this motion, that means let a few people enjoy the freedom and others wait. And that's the new liberal policy. They will wait till the opportunity will trickle down. But that's not going to happen. We have to make it happen. It's a question of ensuring the rights of health, education, employment, food, and particularly in Indian society, which is divided already in the name of caste, creed, sex. Discrimination is there, and the participation is not ensured. Rather, it is hindered in that case unless the equality is guaranteed, the freedom is having no meaning, and democracy will not succeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohammad Salim. Democracy or freedom without equality of opportunity is substanceless. That's the summing up of the argument. I'll now call upon Shumon Mukhopadhyay to be the second speaker for the motion. Shumon, so far I'm concerned, is by far the most important theatre personality in this city. He's also a filmmaker. So, Shumon Mukhopadhyay, if I could slightly alter a famous line of King Lear, pray undo the argument.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I have to be a little synoptic in this milieu with a very profundicating motion in action. It is like a bamboozle that puts you in a quandary. It's very difficult. Coming to the point, it is a strange fact that freedom and equality, the two basic ideas of democracy, are to some extent contradictory. Logically considered, freedom and equality are mutually exclusive, just as the society and the individual are mutually exclusive. This is what Thomas Mann has to say. But given a choice to opt or to reflect on this issue, even for the sake of a debate, I would rather opt for freedom. A society that puts equality before freedom will get neither. A society that puts freedom before equality will get a high degree of both. That's my argument. Like in Indian Constitution, the issue of equality comes before freedom. But B.R. Ambedkar, who chaired the committee that drafted the India's Constitution, concluded his presentation with a significant statement or a pointer, quote, "On the 26th January 1950, we are going to enter into a life of contradictions. In politics, we will have equality, and in social and economic life, we will have inequality. But since 1950, the context has changed, the historical paradigm shifted, And with 1.2 billion Indians, we have noticed the slow progress in removing the social and economic inequality in India. We have realized that except in God-given and constitutional rights, we are not equal. We are all unequal. The utopian promise of equality is but the banner of every powerful, power-hungry politician in modern history. And the rise of the egalitarian society means the death of the free society, of the independent voice. So we can infer, free people are not equal, equal people are not free. In order to clarify this principle more fully, let us divide it into two and start from free people are not equal. I suppose you will agree that if anyone succeeds for a night with one snap of fingers to make us all equal in income and welfare, the next day, same time, once again everyone will be different. All this logically leads to the conclusion that if people are free to be themselves, then they could not possibly economically or intellectually equal. At the second part of this principle, mainly that equal people are not free, I would suggest thinking for a moment about a country where people are indeed economically equal. If you already have thought of one, let me convince that the people in that country are not at all free. Why, you would ask? Honestly speaking, the modus operandi of an equal society, quote, equal society, is to suppress the abilities of the more ambitious individuals, to prevent them from achieving greatest objectives, to artificially hold the progress of the minority, since, alas, the exceptionally skillful people always represent minority. In order to slow down the speed, equal the speed of the more inactive and lagging majority. In Soviet Union, there are many cases like Vasily Grossman or Isaac Babel, Anna Akhtomova, Sostakovich, theater director Meyerhold, all faced tremendous attack, all in the name of equality. So, like the inequality of freedom, the non-freedom of equality. Democracy doesn't mean that people have to confront concentrated systems of economic power only through organized groups formed with ideals and ethics of equality. Democracy also means that there is a space for isolated individuals, independent, solitary, small voices. If individuals of that kind can exist, then democracy can exist too. All this will lead to a sense of equality in the society, but not without them. The beginning and end of all philosophy is freedom. The essence of human nature is human freedom and the consciousness of the freedom. Rousseau, Mill, Humboldt, Kant, Russell, anybody, all the philosophers. Like I come to some personal experience with my recent film, Kangal Malshat, which faced non-refusal of CBFC certification because they have cited few points. I just want to read them out to you. So that proves my point, what I'm talking about, freedom more than equality. Number one, the treatment of the film with unnecessary use of abusive languages, sexuality and casual approach in portraying social movements may hurt the sentiments of many people in our society. Number two, the portrayal of Stalin, the great Russian leader, is so irresponsibly done in the film that the dogmatic statement may hurt the sentiments of many Stalinists in the country and may create unrest on public screening. Number three, the way, quote, departure of Tata Company, unquote, has been uttered in the film, it seems to malign or at least look down upon a significant movement of a civic society. Number four, the way the Honorable CM, Ms. Mamata Banerjee's oath-taking ceremony has been shown seems distortion of history and may hurt many common people of West Bengal and create sensation, within brackets, violence. Like, is there any law that states that in a film containing the oath-taking of a chief minister that one has to see with joy on their face, a joyous expression? I don't know. So you have to, that they are saying that you have to show enthusiasm and joy while watching the television. Because in my film, the character was lying down and yawning. That's not permissible. So if all the criticality, artistic fantasy, burlesque, sardonic voice get killed in the name of certification, which is also a part of the equality laws which the Constitution gives, then it is regrettable in our country like this. Like after that, I have to appeal to the Film Certification Tribunal, Appellate Tribunal in Delhi. When they saw the film, they refuted all the points which was given by the CBFC Kolkata, and they said that it is too much harsh on the left. You must reduce the left bashing. There's too much critique of the left, so I don't know where to go. CBFC here is saying that I'm too much critical about the new government. In Delhi, they're saying I'm critical of the old government. Now, how to make a film in this condition? Then another thing, very interesting thing which happened, they'd given a note about the abusive language. With regard to the use of abusive language, the language used may appear to be abusive, but it is the common language of the people who are portrayed in the film. Fine, fair enough. But at the end, they also direct. We also direct that the original abusive words which have been translated as, dick, fuck, etc. in the English subtitles, used in film should be reduced by 50%. So imagine that the problem is that how can a filmmaker, an independent filmmaker, operate in this constitution? And this is what the equality means. Is that the equality we're talking about? Now, interestingly, I have to give a list to them that what have I replaced, because I want to release the film. There's a lot of money invested in the film. Like the strange thing, I'll just give one example. Like I have to give a list: page, character, change, modification, deletion, duration. So for constable, I used a Bengali word called ban bip, sister bip, deleted, change of duration 17 frames. Bodhi, the character, says boka bip, fucker puch, change, no change in duration. Then, so I think that this is the list which I've made, and while I'm making the list, I'm finding what a funny situation we are in. So, I apologize for using these words here for this very august audience and speakers. But you can be a great poet, a great author, great filmmaker, great painter, great theatre director. But what is the point if you're not given the freedom to voice your concerns, the critic, your independent voice? What I will do with the equality? A great author in our country can write a great book. But if it is not been allowed to publish, if a filmmaker is not allowed to proclaim their voice, then what is the point of getting inequality? So finally, to conclude, the society that aims first for freedom will not end up with equality, but end up with closer approach to equality. You can only aim at equality by giving some people right to take things from others, like A and B decide what C shall do for the D. The use of force to achieve equality will destroy the freedom, and the force introduced for good purposes will end up in hands of people who use it to promote their own interests. On the other hand, a society that puts freedom first will end up with both greater freedom and greater equality. Thank you.
Freedom is the oxygen of creativity. Shumon Mukhopadhyay was saying that. Rajiv Sardesai, dare I say the most well-known face on Indian television, could have been playing cricket today instead of Sachin Tendulkar and Dhoni, fellow Oxonian. Rajiv Sardesai to speak against the motion.
Thank you. Distinguished guests, members of the opposition, moderator Rudrangshu Mukherjee, and the wonderful crowd who I'm going to try and get on my side of the Calcutta Club. Is freedom more important than equality in a democracy? Wonderful subject, wrong venue. For the Calcutta Club and its members, the privileged elite of Calcutta, to talk about freedom in this wonderful environment, in these salubrious surroundings, both my opponents and many of the members here are simply living in an idyllic world, a world that you have created because you can celebrate your freedom, you can relish your freedom, because you don't really care about equality. Equality doesn't matter for you. Because at the end of the day, you in a way, and when I say you, I refer to all of us in a way, have perpetuated inequality. I'm delighted to see so many women here, because for years the Calcutta Club, and perhaps still now, did not allow women to be members. You created an unequal society, and today you come and conduct a debate where I hear freedom being valued more than equality. I would like to ask all those young women whose brothers and husbands were members of this club, what mattered to you more, freedom or equality? Now finally you've made them members. So finally there's a sense of equality. But go beyond these environs. Let's take this debate beyond the Calcutta Club. Let's go a couple of kilometers into the shanties of Calcutta and ask the same question. Does freedom matter or does equality matter? It's all very well for Shumanda to complain. Shumanda is more worried about his film being released. Someone else, Kunal, is worried about why is the West Bengal Chief Minister not allowing cartoons of her to be shown. These are all elitist preoccupations. Whether a cartoon can be shown or not. Whether a film can be screened or not. For the millions who stay outside the salubrious environs, as I keep calling them, of the Calcutta Club, in the streets and the jhuggies and the jhopdis of this city and indeed any other part of this country, equality matters. Every January 26th and every August 15th, if you're traveling, a young little boy will come and knock on your window and ask you, would you like to buy a flag? He isn't selling that flag out of some sense of freedom or patriotism. He's selling it because, quite simply, he needs to feed his mouth. The fact is that we are a terribly unequal society. And we are a society where there isn't equality of opportunity and equality in terms of access to resources. And we are a long way from achieving that. The first speaker, Kunal, suggested that freedom is a necessary condition for equality, is an enabling condition for equality. My argument is equality is a state of mind. Without it, this whole concept of freedom is totally utopian. 65 years after independence, let's go on the streets of India and go not just in Calcutta Club, but let's go to Chhattisgarh and ask the tribal, what matters to him more? The notion of being a free Indian who gets, possibly through freedom, the value of one vote, which is often bought? Or does he really want access to resources, his own resources, because his own land is being snatched away? Let's take this question to the Dalits of Ravi Shankar Prasad's Bihar, parts of which even today Dalits are denied access to the village well or the village temple. Let's take this question to possibly and controversially a Kashmiri boy who comes to the big city and then is told that he's a terrorist or is identified and stereotyped as a terrorist. What does freedom mean for him? Let's take these questions to women in Haryana who perhaps suffer from the worst form of gender prejudice. Let's take these questions to multiple Indias. Let's not take this to one India. Freedom is wonderful if you can enjoy it. Freedom is wonderful if you can celebrate it. Freedom means nothing if you have a hungry stomach. Freedom means nothing if you take your little boy to a health center because he's ill and he's turned out because you don't have the money to pay for the doctor. Freedom means nothing if you take your little child girl child to a school, and the quality of education is simply not good enough. Freedom can only work when you have a level playing field, when you have equality of opportunity in the truest sense of the term. Else, freedom is meaningless. We have to look at where we stand today as a society 66 years after independence and then decide this decision whether freedom matters more than equality in a democracy. Just to give you just one figure, and there can be many that can be given. The new UNDP report. India ranks 136th out of 186 countries. We are even lower than post-war Iraq. And this is based on basic human indicators of health and education. Look at the income inequalities in this country. In an unequal society, only the privileged can celebrate freedom. We have to somewhere, therefore, take a step back from this debate. We all get agitated, as I said, in television studios, and I would support Shumon if his film was censored. I would support Kunal if his book was censored. But these, at the end of the day, are not the critical defining aspects of a democracy. At the end of the day, a democracy must be defined when you are able to create a level playing field. Have you attempted to create a level playing field? The best that our political class does is provide reservations, provide some handouts. But you need more. You need equal opportunity. You need to create a system where every individual can stand from the same place. And then let's have a race. You can't have a race where one person on one side of the road is traveling in a BMW and the other guy is traveling in a bullock cart, and then you come to the Calcutta Club and tell me freedom matters more than equality. Because then you are perpetuating the same inequality which has troubled this country since the last 66 years. There are two politicians waiting to speak on the other side. And I do hope that they have some answers. Because both of them represent what has unfortunately been termed as Bimaru states. One from Rajasthan, one from Bihar. There's one on my side. My side will defend itself. I have a minister, at least on my side, who is trying to push an equal opportunity commission. I don't know what the other side is doing, and the good thing on the other side is the speakers are BJP and Congress, so no one can accuse me of being biased in that, because both the Congress and the BJP have been willing partners over the last 66 years in perpetuating inequality, as ironically has the left. I mean, the left ruled these states for God knows how long and did very little about inequality, but I would like to believe that my one co-panelist is an exception. So the political class has perpetuated inequality. You and I have perpetuated it. We all live in our lovely little cubby holes, feeling so satisfied and smug about where we are in life. We are more worried, Avik Babu is more worried about whether India grows at 7% or 10%. The boy in Chhattisgarh wants to know what is in it for me. And India growing at 10%, will I benefit or not? The one thing that defines this country today is the vaulting ambition of every Indian. Every Indian, whether it's your driver or your domestic, wants to have a better life for his child than he can have. And he can only get that when you create an equal society, not when you necessarily create a so-called free society. Because freedom, as I keep saying, is an elitist, esoteric concept. Did we really get free on August 15, 1947? Did we really achieve true freedom in the true sense of the term? To my mind, the greatest Indian of the last century, and with due apologies to the Bengalis here, who might think it's Rabindranath Tagore, with due apologies to the Gandhians here who might think it was the Mahatma, to my mind, the greatest Indian, because he had this idea of equality above freedom, was Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar. His legacy has today been unfortunately appropriated and bastardized, in a sense, by his legatees. But I'm going to leave you with one quote of Baba Sahib which stands in my mind. He said, "So long as you do not achieve social liberty, Whatever freedom is provided by the law is of no avail to you. A constitution which guarantees equality is not enough anymore. That equality must translate into practice. Only then will we be a true democracy in the spirit that the founder of this constitution had for us. Thank you very much.
Equality is much more important than freedom. In fact, without equality, freedom is empty, vacuous. Muhammad Salim might be wondering if the color of Rajdeep Sardesai's kurta is purely coincidental. But before I call upon the other speakers to speak, I want to just add a caveat. There are 5 politicians on the panel. They represent different political parties. We like to believe in the Calcutta Club and the Telegraph that they are here today to speak in their individual capacities as thinking individuals. What they say may or may not represent their party's political positions. So please remember that when you vote or when you assess what they have said. Ravi Shankar Prasad, Deputy Leader of the Opposition in the Rajya Sabha, former Minister for Information Broadcasting in the Bajpayee government, and as the unputdownable paper said this morning, the only man perhaps in the world to have represented God in a court of law. Ravi Shankar Prasad, I ask you to speak for the motion.
Mr. Moderator, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. It is the 3rd time I am coming to Calcutta Club in a debate, and every time I come, I see the crowd bigger and bigger. You Calcuttans are great. We keep on speaking all around the country, and rarely to find such a huge crowd in a Calcutta Club on a Saturday evening. Therefore, keep it up. Let me begin by a very fundamental question. If there was no freedom, Rajdeep, were we debating it today in Calcutta Club? And you were given the sterling eloquence platform to speak as you just spoke? Maybe Stalin and Mao Zedong may be smiling in their graves. Let me take him head on. They have 600 television channels. We have 129 24-hour news channels, at times uttering something nonsense, at times something tolerable. But people accept. Rajdeep, do you mean to say that people of the country who see CNN, IBN and IBN 7 and form their opinion don't enjoy their freedom? I think you are doing an injustice to the creativity which your own channel produces day in and day out. This debate about freedom and equality is not a new debate. And the people of the country have responded in substantial measure. Avik Babu, about whom I have the highest regard, knows it too well, of 70s when emergency was imposed. Censorship was imposed. Political leaders of opposition were in jail. And the toast of that whole period was, bread is more important, equality is more important, not liberty, not freedom. And when the time came in 1977, the people of the country rose as one and showed, no, we value our freedom, because if there will be freedom, only then equality will also come. Therefore, the people of the country have repeatedly rejected this idea over the years that equality is more important at the cost of freedom. Because in a democracy, it is the freedom and freedom alone which creates the condition for genuine equality. Democracy cannot survive without freedom. A controlled democracy can never give you genuine equality. Ladies and gentlemen, God created freedom. Human being removed it. But empirical evidence over the years world over shows that when a government sought to remove liberty and freedom for greater equality, it ended up losing both and also ultimately its share. It has happened in many places. It may happen again in future. Because the very human instinct wants freedom and also wants equality, but under conditions of freedom. Yes, at times democracy creates political inequality. It happens. Recently, a political formation of Tamil Nadu learned to its dismay that when it sought to withdraw support from the Delhi formation, there was a CBI raid of political inequality. It does happen. When the left was left out of the central formation, nothing right was done to set right things. That also created some sort of political inequality. Because ultimately in a democracy, it is the inner resilience of democracy which creates the condition for setting things right. And it has been there. Rajdeep, I was amazed with your wide experience, you not trusting the inner wisdom of our people. I'm very proud to say that people of India today know that they can defeat any political leader, howsoever popular. Any political party, howsoever powerful, be it Calcutta, be it Patna or in Delhi. We had a regime, 30 years, unassailable. What happened? We all know. Rajdeep talked about my Bihari roots. Yet I am proud to be a Bihari. The political leaders thought he will rule for 40 years, unassailable. What happened? Today things are changing in Bihar, including for Dalits, including Mahadalits, because there is a government which empower them and also insist upon good governance, free from scam and corruption. That is what freedom gives you. When I'm sitting in Calcutta Club, Nobel laureate Amartya Sen said, a country should not be judged as fit for democracy. It has to be fit through democracy. And I recall other Nobel laureate V.S. Naipaul, as he rightly stated, in a famous book, Billion Mutinies, today Indians know who they are and what they owe to themselves. And this awakening, empowerment, acknowledgement has come to the process of democracy where freedom is available. Ladies and gentlemen, let me give you two examples as to how India is changing. Today, the cricket team has big players from smaller towns. Have you noted? From Ranchi, from Meerut, from Gorakhpur and Lucknow, they are shining so well. It's truly outstanding. And how, now I'm in the 13 years of Indian Parliament, when I see young political worker from the most marginalized background shining on the national stage, I feel very proud about India, which is marching with empowerment. And the third extraordinary example, when that unfortunate rape happened in Delhi of Nirbhaya, could you believe, ladies and gentlemen, on the Rajpath, young boys and girls knocking at the gates of Rashtrapati Bhavan, seeking accountability and change of law, which the Parliament of India was forced to enact for good measure. That is the changing India which is occurring because of freedom which democracy has given, which is ushering in equality. Yes, growth is important. Growth versus equity debate is too old. But don't forget, growth without equity is possible. It will be elitist with Mercedes-Benz. But if you want genuine equity, ladies and gentlemen, it will not be without growth. And what has happened we in India have wandered away long years debating as to how bread should be distributed. But how should the number of bread be enlarged? We have not debated. That is the most important issue. And Kunal, politicians will always claim they have all the answers. And if they don't give the answers, the people of the country will show them the door. Who knows? People of the country are waiting for a change in Delhi too when the time comes. That is what is of essence of democracy. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, this 1 billion people may not have the affluence of Singapore and may not have the powerful impact of the titanic growth of China. But this growth is stable because voice of the people are heard. And when they are heard, we celebrate the diversity of Indian democracy, where the human quality also arises. Yes, in the same atmosphere of gloom, there are states which are doing so well. 10%, 11%, 12% growth. Even the human index is rising. That's good. That's a matter of celebration, a matter of pride. We have to keep on going because the freedom of democracy has given a message, clear, categorical, unambiguous. Perform, give good governance without scam, without corruption, and the people of the country will celebrate you. Thanks a lot.
Freedom is at the heart of democracy. It is the engine of change in India. Thank you, Ravi Shankar Prasad. Now may I request Saugata Rai, our very own Saugata Rai from Calcutta, who has always been very close to this debate, has spoken a number of times in the Telegraph debate, not just in Calcutta, in Jamshedpur as well. Member of Parliament from Calcutta, Saugata Rai speaking against the motion.
Mr. Moderator, speakers on both sides, ladies and gentlemen, I am at somewhat of an advantage because the first two speakers for the motion were both creative people. Now, the writer who wrote the story for Shumon's book, Nabarun Bhattacharya, he also coined a term called Fataru. Who are Fataru? They are human beings who can fly. Now we had two human beings there, both creative, who flew. They had no feet on the ground. They have no idea of the realities on the ground. I thought Sri Ravi Shankar Prasad, even though he does not have to win elections like us, gets elected to the Rajya Sabha, would have his feet more on the ground. Now his idea of equality is big players from small towns. If this is the BJP or Ravi Shankar's idea of equality, well, God save the BJP government in the future. Another idea of equality propagated by Sri Prasad was that we have 129 news channels. Have you ever considered how many villages of India have got electricity so that they can see the smart 129 news channels in whatever language? You haven't. Let me start at the beginning then. One poet from our city of Calcutta wrote a poem in his teens before he died. He said, "Khudhar jagote prithibi goddomoy, Purnima chand jano jholshano ruti." In the world of hunger, the world is prosaic. The full moon looks like a burnt out roti. That is the reality of India today. This India need not concern itself with the freedom or so-called freedom of the cultural elite, the intellectuals. I'm very sorry that Shumon, who as a playwright acted in Tista Pare Brittanto, which really brought out the travails of the people who live on the church of Tista decided to make this platform to propagate his views against the census. I do not understand, Shumon. What is wrong with you creative people? You think that just by giving you freedom, the world will change? You feel that you have every freedom to use any language you want in a film to be seen by the public. When you made the film, you had no idea that there is a thing called censor in this country. There are no censors for books. There are no censors for plays. But when you made the film with all the money that was invested, you knew there were censors. Why are you complaining now that whoever was in the censor board has suggested some cuts? No, this is not the issue. The issue is much more serious. The issue is that Indian Constitution, which gave us democracy, enshrined certain freedoms in the Article 19. Freedom of speech and expression, freedom to form associations or unions, freedom to assemble peacefully and without arms, freedom to travel anywhere in the country, and freedom to pursue any business. Now let us take one by one. What does freedom of speech and expression mean for the poor man whom Rajdeep mentioned very properly, the disenfranchised tribal from Chhattisgarh? What does that one vote mean to him? He has taken up arms because he doesn't get justice through this notion of freedom. What does freedom to form association or union mean to the shanty dwellers of Garden Reach? He has not been able to form any union for shanty dwellers. What does the meaning of being able to travel anywhere in the country mean to a common villager? A survey showed that 80% of village people have never traveled outside their districts in this country. We are talking of this freedom without ensuring these basic necessities, basic equality. There is no meaning. You say that these freedoms are justiciable, which means that if these freedoms are not given to you, denied to you, you can go to the court. Which poor man can go to the High Court to file a writ under 226? Who can afford a lawyer like Ravi Shankar Prasad? Which poor man can go to the Supreme Court, even reach Delhi, to file a writ in the Supreme Court? Nobody. This is all on paper. In India, unless we ensure a modicum of equality, the freedoms have ceased to have any meaning. And we are talking of when people voted for freedom in 1977. Yes, I know. I was in the Congress then. One unfortunate fellow who managed to win when there were no Congress candidates winning from Amritsar to Calcutta. Indian people voted for freedom. 36 years since then, have they got equality? You said that if you have freedom, then you will have equality. No, we have not got equality. And in the last 22 years, I may submit, moderator sir, inequalities have grown. In the age of liberalization, privatization, globalization, poverty has become more acute. Inequality has become more rampant. I feel sick in my stomach when I see a Bombay industrialist building a 37th floor house for his private residence and gifts his wife a Learjet on her birthday. What freedom has meant to the poor people? Still today, the thing we want to debate in Parliament is that whether India should have food security, which means 35 kgs of rice and wheat. And we are not sure if we will be able to reach that to the last man. Freedom has not meant anything to the poor in this country, to the disenfranchised, the Harijan in Salman state, Uttar Pradesh, in western Uttar Pradesh. They do not cast their votes for fear of reprisal from their upper caste brethren. What is this freedom that you have given to our people? No. We must have a modicum of equality before this freedom has any meaning. We have freedom of religion in this country. People can practice any religion. But as Swami Vivekananda, whose 150th birth anniversary we are celebrating now, said that you cannot practice religion on an empty stomach. For the poor, religion has no meaning. For him, the only meaning is in the daily bread that he gets. As Subhash Mukhopadhyay, another great poet from this city, wrote, Bondhu, ফুল খেলবার দিন নয় অদ্য, ধ্বংসের মুখোমুখি আমরা, চোখে আর স্বপ্নের নেই লীল মদ্য, কাঠ ফাটা রোদ শেখে চামড়া. Friend, it is not the time to play with flowers. We are facing destruction. We have no glamour of the blue wine in our eyes. The brutal sun is roasting our skins. We must realize that 63 years of the Constitution has been a long enough time. If we have to give any meaning to the freedom of the people of this country, then we must ensure the minimum equality among people. Thank you.
Freedom already exists on paper in Indian democracy, but without equality, it is meaningless. Therefore, equality is more important than freedom in Indian democracy, a reversal of the terms of the debate. The last speaker for the motion, Mr. Sachin Pilot, rising young star in Indian politics and within the Congress party, the Minister for Corporate Affairs. May I ask you to pilot the motion for freedom.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen. I've heard some of the speakers already this evening. This is coming to a close from our end. And I find it very amusing, despite the rhetoric, the very big English words, the momentary passion that our opponents have displayed on the stage, that we are even having a debate about what's more important, equality or freedom. That begs the question, is equality not important? It most certainly is. Are we not fighting for it every day of our lives? Whether as a politician or a bureaucrat or a professional, as a concerned Indian citizen, this is what we do every waking hour. Not because our constitution mandates it, not because it makes you win debates, because we feel in our hearts for all those people that Rajdeep talked about, who live in the slums, who are Dalits, who are tribals, who have not got what they deserve and they want and they aspire for. But let me ask you this. This 1.2 billion strong nation that we are all talking about this evening is a free country. For 95 years, we had a freedom movement. We didn't have an equality movement, because freedom is paramount to get any form of equality. Absolute equality is a forced notion. All men are born equal. I've heard that, you've heard that. But unfortunately, all human beings are not equal. We want us to be equal. People are rich, but are all rich people equal? Are all billionaires equal? Are all BJP chief ministers equal? Are all editors equal? Alas, some have made it to Rajya Sabha and some have not. You can try to be equal. We fight and aspire for equality. But freedom is what gives us hope to live. Friends, I was hearing our previous speaker talk about our creative friends who put their energies, their thoughts, their blood and sweat into creating something that they believe is important for themselves and their society. Should they not have the freedom to display that? We have rules, we have regulations, we must comply with it. But I'd like to inform them that not everybody is flying. I may be a pilot, but my feet are firmly, Sogata Royji, on the ground. And I say this with all the conviction at my disposal. I have a flying license and I can fly you anytime you want. Friends, the concept of freedom, because it is invisible, we take for granted. For freedom, people have laid down their lives. For equality, we petition, we go on fast, we struggle. But because in this country we have the freedom to enforce those aspirations of the unequal people into our policy making, that makes our country stick together. I think the freedom in this country that we have, our armed forces protect our border, but our constitution, our judiciary, and most importantly, our society provides us the freedom to live, to breathe, to pray, to eat, to wear, to do whatever we want. And that freedom of an individual is something that everyone cares for. Should we not have better schools, more hospitals, better roads, electricity for all, food for all? Yes, we must. But ask those people who you condemn by saying they're have-nots. It is not destiny. It is not elections. It is the hope of remaining free forever, generations onwards, that they live and they aspire to have a better life. There are societies and countries which have tried to be equal in all the parameters that Rajdeep talked about. But those societies were rotting inside because the spirit was not free. They could not say what they want. Yes, we have imperfect races in this country. One on a bullock cart, one in a Mercedes Benz, one is walking on his foot. But thank the Lord, we have freedom to have a race. These are not perfect races. But would you want to be in a society where you can't even think of racing? You can't think of saying what you really feel, expressing yourself freely, independently, without the fear of someone watching over you all the time? Our democracy is ensured that our freedom stays and stays forever. Technology is bringing more equality, certainly. But why are all net citizens equal? Because there's freedom to say what you want. Albeit there are aberrations. You can tweet, Rajdeep, whatever you feel. You can criticize, you can not agree with the government, with the policy making, with views of politicians, of bureaucrats. How many nations in our region can be proud of having that? Friends, I believe in this region, in this country, I've been able to term what I've been thinking about for some years now. And the terminology I've used is that in India, we have what is known as, what I call it, the ovarian lottery. Where you take birth will pretty much dictate who you will marry, how much you will study, how much you will earn, where you will work, what your pecking order in society will be. And the only way to break the cycle of ovarian lotteries is to have freedom. Freedom to sit for any exam. Freedom to qualify to become an IAS officer, an IPS officer, a politician, a bureaucrat, a judge. Whatever you want. Not perfect, I agree with you. But our environment provides for that freedom to foster, for people to follow a dream. And if we have no dreams, we can't build an ideal nation. We have 41 political parties in parliament. And I challenge my friends in the West, where they have 2 or 3 parties and they can't get the budgets passed. Despite having 40 parties, we are a functional democracy. Are we a noisy democracy? Yes, because we have freedom of our MPs, our politicians to say what they think, what they feel. And that fear of not being able to say, to demonstrate, to act, yes, it seems chaotic. But ask yourselves how much you value that freedom. You get up in the morning, you go to work, you look for work, whatever you do, but you know that your heart and your soul, and most importantly, your spirit is free. You can write what you want. You may have opposition. You may have people opposing you, criticizing you. But we know in this country, the poorest the poor, the people who are on the fringes of our society, both economically and geographically, have the same rights, have the same freedom to go to a court, to file a case against the top politicians, top bureaucrats, top industrialists. Equality is not about rhetoric. Equality is not about good food and a blanket to sleep on. Equality is that everyone must feel that their political objectives, that their personal ambitions, that their collective family who wants to move ahead in life has the fullest freedom of the law and societal values that they can take forward. Friends, this debate, I think, is a non-starter, because without freedom, you can have nothing. And once you have freedom, everything else will follow. I cherish this freedom, and I think none of us who are listening to this debate will even doubt parting with even 1 ounce of our freedom. Equality will be our aim. We will get to it, but without freedom, we can never achieve that. Thank you very much.
Freedom allows us to fight equality and to change it. Thank you, Sachin Pilot. The final speaker of the debate and the final speaker against the motion, Salman Khurshid. Thank you, Salman, for coming away from the corridors of diplomacy to take part in this debate and to kindly acceding to our request. Salman Khurshid.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid I have an unequal advantage over everybody. And therefore, in a sense, I have to ask myself this question, that indeed answer the question itself. Equality is a good thing. If they had a chance to do some repartee, equality would have been a good thing, and that's how it should work. But today I have an unequal advantage, and I shall use it. And I use it by starting with and reminding my friend Rajdeep Sardesai mentioned Equal Opportunity Commission. I think this is the greatest idea that we can have in our society today. There is difficulty in pushing it, and sometimes I wonder, is it that I'm not being able to explain it to some of my colleagues on the other side? Ravi Shankar Prasadji, you and your party, are you confusing this with Equal Commission for Opportunity? Equal Opportunity Commission, are you actually thinking that this is about Equal Commission for Opportunity? I want to assure you that this is not about equal commissions. This is about equal opportunities. And it is the same mold of misunderstanding that I seem to get a sense you have about the topic today. Because your lead speaker opened the debate, talked about all kinds of things, and talked about liberty and freedom are essentially something that leads you to equality. You've talked about people coming out from smaller cities and towns of Delhi and today being able to show themselves as the star performers of Indian cricket. Now, we did become free in 1947. You didn't say this in 1947, but you're saying it today because you believe, and I know you believe, despite what you've said, that we have today the celebration of equality, that India is moving inexorably towards equality, and that's what we have emphasized from our side. If you are equal, you are free. If you're not equal, you're not free. And every philosopher will tell you no matter what spin is being given, and I'm sure that your lead speaker, Kunal Basu, will agree with me, that every philosopher will say that when you come together for the first time for a social contract, which is the basic fundamental principle that unites a society, that becomes a constitutional fundamental for those of us who write a constitution, and those of us who don't write a constitution, such as UK, don't have a written constitution. It is the coming together of equal individuals, whether actually physically or in our imagination, that gives them freedom. There is no freedom without equality. You don't get freedom out of the air. Somebody is talking about representing God. God didn't give us freedom. God gave us, if you believe Adam and Eve, if you believe God gave us the shape of a monkey from which we emerged and have become. Some of us haven't emerged yet, continue to be like monkeys. Others have emerged. And I don't want to name anybody because I think we are in a very friendly atmosphere. But the fact remains that God made us in whichever form. The idea of equality and freedom was developed when people as equals came together face to face and said, what kind of society do you want to? The greatest philosophers of our time, John Rawls, he said, put everybody in a darkened room. Make them forget everything they know about themselves. Make them forget their own attributes. Make them forget what kind of life they will lead. Make them forget what kind of riches they have. Make them forget what kind of talents they have. And you sit them down, and what will they say they want? I concede to you. They said, and Rawls says that they will say, we want liberty. So I concede that to you. But liberty of what kind? Liberty consistent with equal liberty for the other person. They want equal liberty. There is no liberty without equality. The very fact that you become equal when you come into a darkened room, forget your attributes, forget your talents, forget your aspirations, forget what you are, and you sit there to decide what kind of society you want to live in, what kind of human society you want to develop. The first thing that happens is that you become equal. There is no conception of anything that human beings can do which is desirable and which is wholesome and which is in any form beneficial or rewarding other than by doing it as equal people. It is true that you can transform equality by using all forms of ideas of freedom. But those ideas all flow from the very, very basic idea of equality. And I say this to my young friend, Sachin Pilot, who I think made a very important intervention. And because he has great deal of knowledge about the social media, he said the social media is effective today because we are free. That's not true. Social media is effective today because we are equal. It is the equalness, it's the equality of social media and your use of social media and your ability to manipulate and to use and utilize technology that gives you the freedom, a freedom which then perhaps needs to be regulated. And it needs to be regulated because every freedom has to be regulated. I have never known of equality being regulated. But I have known of every freedom. Please read your constitution. And if you are true Indians, please bow to the constitution which says reasonable restrictions on all your freedom of speech, on your freedom of work, on your freedom of action, a reasonable restriction. Tell me if the Indian constitution speaks of a reasonable restriction on equality. The Indian constitution says you must have equality. Indeed, the Supreme Court and judges and people have said equality must be real equality. It must be substantive equality. It must not just be equality in terms and words. It must not be equality only in terms of expression. It must be true and substantive equality. And that's where we come into the whole idea of the reservation debate. That's where we come into the whole idea of affirmative action. Please don't, in order to mislead the brightest and the greatest audience that you can get anywhere in India, try to cover the facts of life and the truth about our constitutional aspiration. Our constitutional aspiration fundamentally and essentially is for equality. And that's what we are here to celebrate. As far as freedom is concerned, I think a Calcutta audience would know what Janis Joplin has sung, what Chris Christopherson has written, that freedom is another word when there is nothing left to lose. That is freedom. Freedom is not when you think that there is something that will be taken away, that something will not be taken away. The idea of real freedom, not the kind of freedom that you have talked of, but the real freedom idea comes from the ultimate artist who says you are free when you have nothing more to lose. You have nothing more to lose except your chains. Man, human beings, man and women, born free everywhere, freedom, but slaves because they are enchained. And when you remove the chains, when the chains are removed, they become equal and then they become free. So freedom is but a dimension of equality, because equality is a prerequisite of freedom, and freedom is not a prerequisite of equality. I hope that Kunal Basu will invite me for a lecture at the Said School of Oxford School of Management, because this is something I hope will provide an additional thing for them to think about. What this topic has done today, to confuse you, ladies and gentlemen, is that they haven't told us, Rudra, you've not told us, is it factual? Is it descriptive of Indian democracy? Is it normative? Is it what we want Indian democracy to be? Is it a regret that Indian democracy is like this? Is it a hope that this is what Indian democracy should be? Or is it indeed an attempt to confuse this audience, which is what the proponents of the debate seem to have tried to do? Well, let me tell you, this is not an audience that you can confuse. This is an audience that knows what is the best. This is the audience that knows that equality is but the best. And I believe that equality is what you will support. And if equality is not supported in Calcutta, sorry, equality will not survive anywhere else. This is the city of equality. Thank you very much.
There you have it. The Calcutta Club Telegraph debate as an enabling condition. It might get India's foreign minister a lecture tour to the University of Oxford. There's very little time left. The said foreign minister has a flight to take back to Delhi very shortly. So I will put the motion to the vote. The motion reads, this House believes in Indian democracy, freedom is more important than equality. Those in favor, please raise your hands. Those against, please raise your hands. The motion stands defeated.